Hi gang, Donna here. Today I am sitting down with Christopher Earnshaw, who is a 33rd Freemason who has resided in Tokyo, Japan for the last 30 plus years. He is an author of 12 books on such topics as pharmaceuticals, tarot, Japanese art, Freemasonry, and neuroscience. He also is a cellist, a cordon bleu licensed cook, and has a BA in Chinese and Japanese and a PhD in neuroscience. Today we'll be discussing his choice to join the Freemasons and if it was better to have joined or not. So let me welcome Chris to the podcast. Hi, Chris.
Hi, good morning.
How are you
Good
doing?
evening.
It's evening here, but that's okay. It's morning over there. So
Yeah,
you've lived in Japan for 33 years. Where are you originally from?
from the UK, London.
Okay.
Yes.
What made you decide to move to Japan?
So originally I came out here to study Japanese. I had a place at Cambridge University, but at high school my grades weren't so strong. And so in England, the university system is quite strict because it's a free education. If you don't meet the grade every year, they throw you out.
Okay.
And so having had a very poor, not poor, but mediocre high school experience, I decided to come to Japan, get a grounding in Japanese before studying the same subject at university.
Interesting. I actually interviewed a girl who, at 16 here in the United States, decided to quit school, get her GED, and go to the UK to go to college. So, because she wanted to not so much learn in a different area, she just wanted to learn with more mature people, so she thought. So it was, she's like, I realized it wasn't the case, but at the time. So, what made you get into the Freemasonry then?
So it's sort of like in the family. My father and grandfather, and also my great-grandfather had all been members. They didn't really talk to me much about it, but I knew that they were. And there was one occasion which I was really surprised. Um, my grandfather was staying with us at home because he was ill. And so we put him in a spare bedroom. And then one evening, the speaker from the House of Commons, who's rather like Mitch O'Connor, I suppose, came and visited us to see how our grandfather was doing.
Wow.
And I thought, I was really surprised. And it seems obviously they were in the same lodge. And I thought that left a really strong impression on me. So when I had the time and the right connections, then I applied.
I imagine that would leave a heck of an impression on a young man.
Yeah.
This is going to sound silly, but I'm going to say it because I think most people, when they think of Freemasons, they think of National Treasure. I'm sure you're familiar with that movie.
Yep. Yes, I am.
Because we don't really know a lot. It's always been a secret society. So why don't you enlighten us a little bit about what actually the Freemasons are?
Well, it has changed, as you say, nowadays. It's pivoted, to use modern jargon. But present time, it's one of the largest international charities. And we do a lot of charitable work. We collect money from not just from our members, but from doing events like small events at a local levels, like raffles or parties. And at a higher level, we sell books and documentation and collectibles and things like that. So we collect money from various areas, and it allows us to offer, for example, it's not one organization, so it's a little bit, it's not like saying Procter and Gamble,
Okay.
You've got Procter and Gamble UK and Procter and Gamble. This is much more fragmented, but parts of Freemasons, for example, in Texas, the Scottish Rite, which is part of Freemasonry, they have, I think, 5 children's hospitals, which they run for free for children.
Nice.
And in America, to offer free medical anything, is pretty surprising.
Yes.
And it's not just for broken bones, but they have speech therapy and children with severe burns trying to get their lives back together to be able to move and live a normal life. And this is all at no cost for the child. It's all paid for by the money that we've collected. We also run old people's homes or retirement homes. Um, and there's so many things that we do. It's just, and every area, they make their own decisions. So there's not a national leadership. That's the interesting thing about Freemasonry. There isn't one person or one overseeing organization telling everybody else what to do. We're all independent, but we are connected.
Okay. So, I mean, so it's very much a network that
Yes.
is of all independent operators then.
Yes, so, and each one has its own flavor. So, for example, in Japan, where I am, and compared to America or to the UK, the type of masonry and the type of charitable works we do tends to be different. In the
What
UK recently, they just gave 2 high-rise ladders to the London Fire Brigade because they had a shortage of these ladders, and these ladder machine, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like a truck with a very, very long ladder on it.
a hook and ladder?
Sorry?
A hook and ladder. My dad used to drive. My dad's a retired
Oh,
fireman,
oh, okay.
and there's a hook and ladder. And usually, what happens is there's a man that drives. It's a longer truck, and there's
Yeah,
two drivers
yeah.
because you have to have one to do the back end. So
Right, something like that, yes. And it can reach, the ladder can go up to 7 stories. And they cost $250,000 each of these machines. And
wow,
we just gave 2 to the London Fire Brigade. So
nice.
I mean, it's just the charity is wide and diverse, but on the other hand, Freemasonry is there for the camaraderie, so that we can study morals to be better people. So it's not just about collecting money and giving it away. It's just one aspect of Freemasonry.
You know, there's a lot of mysticism surrounding Freemasonry in the world. Is that a true thing, or is that just something that is made up hooey?
Um, well, it depends what you mean by mysticism. At the beginning, you mentioned it's a secret society, and
That's
we prefer to say it's a society with secrets.
okay.
So it's rather like me asking you what your balance is in your bank account. You're not going to tell me. It's a private information, you know. It's the same for us. Why should we tell people what's in our bank account?
Understand.
So
I was just curious
no,
because
we hear it a lot, and um, but this is a kind of a carryover. So this organization, Freemasonry, is over 300 years old. It started in 1717, and in the beginning, they wanted only the best moral people to join. So therefore, they kind of limited access to the average Joe, you know.
mhm.
And that was part of the secrecy as well.
Okay, so you had a certain criteria to in order to be able to join, and that makes
Yes.
sense. I mean, you're trying to organize and you want the highest moral character. That makes total
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Um, so you had family that was in it. What made you decide that this would be? I mean, I understand the meeting was a big deal, but there had to be more than that meeting that would push you toward doing this, or was that
Yes.
just it?
Well, it was also self-study. But I'm talking about, I joined in 1984. So at, in the late 70s, early 80s, there wasn't much information about Freemasonry as books. The books tended to be very dry, talking about Victorian ideas of morality and things. And this is not really what we're about. Um, it's we do study morality. That's part of the ritual, is to teach a moral lesson to new candidates to join. But we're not always pushing it down people's throat, you know. And this is one of the things we're trying to get away from, is the idea of dogma. And we want to be more flexible. Um, we have a lot of pride in being a Mason, even though a lot of people will not talk about it. They just keep quiet.
So there is a ritual aspect, though, of it.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes.
So
So that to me, that's one of the appeal of Freemasonry is it's like a multifaceted organism because it has so many different parts of it. If you're interested in charity, there is so much you can do because we have the funds and we have the connections and we know what to do. If you're interested in drama, for example, there is an aspect of drama. We have our ritual is rather like theatre in the round.
okay,
It's people sitting around watching a theatre happening in front of you. There's a debating society aspect about it because we talk a lot about what we intend to do and the future, and then there's the aspect of a kind of spirituality as well, which is, to me is very important. And I think that's actually part of modern Freemasonry that has been lost, is the spiritual aspect, and that's what I write about in my books.
that's what I was going to mention. I noticed that you had a book about tarot as well as dowsing.
Yeah.
And what is your experience with those?
Well, I started off studying tarot because I had a meeting with a tarot reader, and the meeting, his reading was just so mind-blowing for me as somebody who had no experience in the air quotes occult. you know.
Mm-hmm.
um, I was just a businessman, and I had at that time I hadn't joined Freemasonry, and so I met this tarot reader, and I was just where I thought, where did you get this knowledge from?
It just
It's
comes to you. I read tarot.
yeah,
That's why I
yes,
asked.
yeah. And
I,
so I was just, so I have a scientific bent. And so I decided to study the tarot and see what it's all about. And I became a tarot master myself, and I've published my own cards as well as book
nice.
called
So
the Tarot of the Revelation.
I saw that. What
Ah,
is what is your take since you've studied and you also have the science been to it? Where do you
yeah.
think the information comes from?
We it's to do with our mind, because our mind is at one level is a type of receiver, and it receives information. So we think we live with five senses, but it's the sixth and seventh sense which is really more important. So our mind is receiving information all the time, but we tend to block out information that we see as being um, not relevant or trivial or something like that, and we focus on things that we can touch and smell. But in reality, we're receiving information all the time, and people who are psychically uh, guided are the people who actually sit and listen to this information, and they are open to receiving it.
I tend to write books that way. I
Yeah.
also read I also read cards. So the seventh sense, I mean the sixth sense we talk about. What is the seventh sense? How do you describe the seventh sense?
Seventh sense is this gift been given by the universe, which connects all our consciousnesses together. Consciousnesses together. It's a big, difficult word in English, but consciousnesses together. And so, um, I I studied Edgar Casey. I went to his university. I did my master's with at Edgar Casey's university, and he gives this image of a bridge. So we're all like the pillars in the bridge. We are standing one side by side, and the water is our subconscious going underneath us, and we're standing in the subconscious. But a higher level, we're all connected. The one arch connects to the other arch, connects to the other arch, and information is crossing over the top like cars and trucks and things. And we tend to focus downwards rather than focusing upwards.
I wish my husband was still alive because my husband, since the first day, I read for him before we got together as friends, and I told him some blonde was going to come in and rock his world and turn it completely upside down. And a year later, we were together. But he would always ask the question of, "How do you know?" And it's like you just do.
Yeah.
Um, But
yes,
I tell people all the time, I'm like, you're intuitive. They're like, no, I'm not. I'm like, yes, you are. Everybody is connected. It's a simple, say what you want about Star Wars. I don't know where you feel about that, but if you actually dumb down to the principle of Star Wars in the first three movies with the Force
yeah,
connects us and binds us together. It's talking about the very same
yeah,
thing. It's
right.
just people don't look at it that way.
And
And
the oh, sorry, the
no,
most
go ahead.
exciting thing about the Force is that we have the ability to manipulate the Force.
Yes.
We're able to manifest things and change our lives according to our wishes if we know how to do it correctly.
And that's the thing. We get caught up in fear and
Yeah,
we
exactly.
trip ourselves up and we block ourselves from being able to manifest things. I've
Exactly.
manifested a lot of things in my life, and some of my friends nicknamed me manifesting girl at one point. But I realized when you start bringing in fear and whatnot, you start attracting that, and
Mm,
then everything goes sideways, and you're like, okay. But you have to be. I told somebody this yesterday. You have to be in a very balanced place, and not in a place of panic or fear when you're manifesting.
yes, yes. So you can also manifest what you fear most.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's not pretty, not pretty at all.
right.
So, did you manifest living in Japan when you were younger?
I presume I did. I didn't really think about it because I wasn't aware of the the power. That power is a difficult word, but we don't have a better one. But the power that I had, I didn't wasn't aware of it at that young age. It's only when I started using tarot cards and then studying it, I started teaching spiritual exercises to other people. Then I realized how wonderful the world is,
And I
and
don't
that's
think.
what kind of. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, one of my catchphrases I use in my classes that life is wonderful, which mean it's full of wonder. It's not beautiful. It's full of wonder, and these wonders are the things that we should be focusing on. Otherwise, so we wouldn't have to have such poor lives. Our lives could be multifaceted and exciting and stimulating. We wouldn't have to worry about paying bills because you live in abundance. But people always think, as you mentioned, the fear traps you, pulls you down. It's a shame.
When I do readings, I do an hourglass spread, and the center card. I always tell my clients, I'm like, this is what you should be focusing on, because 95% of the time you're focusing on something you shouldn't be focusing on. And I think that in the world now, especially now with all the technology we have so many distractions that it is hard to stop and listen to the information we're getting.
Yes,
And
yes.
we're losing out on things. We're not feeling that connection. We're not, and dare I say, being isolated for the last year, that kind of changed a lot of dynamics with the connection as well.
Mm.
Would you agree?
Yes, I think so. The one of the issues I have is with the news, because the news tends to focus on the lowest common denominator, what will scare people most or get them upset. It's not just Fox News or CNN or the BBC, but in general. And the news tends to be, it's not balanced. It's not like talking to people, see how we can do things better, but they focus on all the bad aspects of how many people got killed, how many people died. So we're living in this perpetual fear all the time. And um, to actually cut off the news and not look at the news, it takes a lot of power to just
Yeah.
turn off the television, because I always want to know what's going on, what's happening, you know.
Well, and if you're not listening to the news, then you have it on your social media. It's
Yes,
constantly somebody's going to give it to you somewhere. You can
yes,
step away. Like last year, my husband would turn on the evening news, and I'm like, I'm going upstairs to write, because I knew if I started watching that, it was going to kill the creativity.
yes, yes.
So you have to find ways to reconnect. For you,
Mm.
do you ever get overwhelmed with negative or fear or anything of that nature? Or have you learned
I'm
enough to?
actually, because I'm aware of it, I'm now fairly good at handling it. I just center myself, take deep breaths. I drop the negativity through my body into the earth and let the earth take the negativity from me. Then I go to the gym a lot. I live near the beach, so I can go to the beach in 20 minutes. So in those ways, I'm able to avoid getting overwhelmed with negativity. Yes. Yeah.
So tell us a little about what is your experience with dowsing?
Dowsing is fantastic. Oh yes, I don't know if I'd mentioned. Did I mention it? But yes. Oh, this is a 3-hour conversation. But um, I started dowsing simply yes, no. And then I came across a book. I can see the book over here. I forgot it has an unusual name. Grace. It'll come to me. Anyway, he taught a method of being more communicative with the pendulum, and so you're able to not use but yes and no, but degrees of answers like from 1 to 100, or directions and all sorts of things. And then he taught about working with energies like spirits. And yes, so I mean, I do a lot of exorcisms,
Okay.
and so it's a strange story, but um, I I trained as a grief counselor, and I was helping out in a psychiatric hospital as a volunteer, mainly with foreigners who got caught up in the system in Japan. And many of them don't speak Japanese, so I went to help out at the hospital. And I found that many people there were possessed, not just I, I was volunteering in this psychiatric hospital, and I met many people. Obviously, a lot of people are stressed because of work environments and they just can't handle it. Um, but there were many people who were possessed. And just thinking, going back 20 years when I was younger, this I wouldn't have believed. Now working with dowsing and Raymond Grace is the name of the person. It's an unusual name, Raymond Grace. He wrote the book about dowsing, how to live the rest of your life. Oh, it annoys me when I can't remember a title. Anyway, yes, so I've been practicing, and now people start to come to me for exorcisms as well.
Do you do a lot of work with people that have crossed over, or do you do any work with them?
No, I haven't really. I talk to people on the other side using the pendulum because I'm not really a psychic. My antenna is not clean enough to receive. I get ideas and images come to my mind, but I don't hear voices that allow me to have a conversation. So I use the pendulum to say, how do you feel and what do you think about this? And is there something you want to say? Um, it's a slow way of doing it. I've also done automatic writing as well, which is also, um, I picked it up really quickly.
It's because me personally, I've had experiences where people have I've talked about this before. I'm a reluctant medium because I was working a house party doing tarot, and this girl's dad wanted to come through, and I'm like, well, he wants to talk to you, and he says you can do this, and she's like, no, I can't. I'm like, yeah, you can. No, all right, give me your hands. So I did it, and he came through, and it was like I've been at other events where people just pop in. I'm like, great.
Yeah.
I don't ask for it. The worst ever happened was I was in the ladies' locker room at the gym, and somebody was talking about her father's headstone. And I'm sitting there changing into my swimsuit, and he is just adamant that I go over there and tell her, don't worry about the headstone. And I'm just like, yeah, this isn't going to look like I'm nuts at all. And so
Right.
I'm not going to do it. And he's just like in my ear, and I'm like, okay, fine. So I go over there, and she just looks at me like I am totally bonkers. So I'm like,
Right.
sorry, just telling you
Yeah.
what he said.
Yeah. It is It's very difficult, that responsibility you take as a medium. So
Yeah.
as you mentioned, I only once or twice when I was reading cards for somebody, a name came into my head. And so I asked the other person, do you know this person called XYZ? And they started crying,
Oh,
and I knew I touched something, but to me it meant nothing. It was just a name. And so I felt, should I be doing this or not? Because
yeah.
uh, it's so anyway, so I'm more onto the spiritual side of Freemasonry rather than um I could go back a few steps about Freemasonry being multifaceted. um yes, I think so. Freemasonry is a really interesting subject. It's very deep.
Yeah.
I've written 4 books on Freemasonry, so yeah, I think it's quite deep.
Well, and I mean, I wanted to touch on the mysticism because you do have, looking at your website, I did see the other two books and I was curious about those. So, the Freemasonry, is it just a male oriented society or is it male and female as well now?
It's There is a male organization and there's a female. We do not mix,
Okay.
and there's many reasons for this. Firstly, the whole organization started 300 years ago when females didn't have the same level of standing in society, if that's a
Right.
nice way of putting it. So the men used to party together, but the women would be having tea somewhere else. And it's just been always like that. There's a second aspect that I believe Freemasonry is actually based on Chinese Taoism. And I've done a lot of research on this. And in China also, the the court was for the men, and the ladies were um, not involved in politics and the day-to-day running of the country. And Taoism was the court religion for the nobles and the king, emperor. And so for that reason, it started off as being men only. And then over the years, starting about 1900, women's organizations started. Um, there's, for example, the largest is the Order of the Eastern Star, but then there's the Rainbow Girls and Job's Daughters, and there are many organizations all having a sort of underneath the umbrella of Freemasonry.
So, how do you become a Freemason?
Yes, that's a good question, and there are a couple of ways of answering it. First of all, you can, if you know somebody, you should ask him, because we never ask people to become Freemasons. That's one of the rules of our organization. If you want to be one, you have to ask, and that's also we have bumper stickers: to be one, ask one. But if you don't know anyone, how do you ask? So the other way is to go to a lodge, but lodges they're not open during the day. We only meet at night times and only one day of the month, so, or twice a month. It's difficult to go when they're open. So the third way, which I recommend, is to look up in the telephone directory, the Grand Lodge or the Provincial Grand Lodge or organization that's in your neighborhood. So if you're in Chicago, you'll have the Grand Lodge of Chicago or the Grand Lodge of what state is Chicago in? Illinois?
Illinois, Illinois.
Yeah, so you have the Grand Lodge of Illinois, and you can go there, and they're open. They're open 7 days, 6 days a week, and you say, "I'd like to join," and how do I do it? And they'll introduce you to the right people, and so they have a lot of experience. You can often ask the wrong person and they give you either oh, I'm sorry, I'm too busy, or you get the elbow, just, oh, I don't do that, or so it's probably best to go to a Grand Lodge and ask, I'd like to join,
What do you see as the benefits of somebody joining?
So yes, so one of the things doing as a grief counselor I've noticed is, and it's happening more and more, is to do with loneliness and people who are not able to join in society, um, particularly in America, where you have a very church-based society, and people join a church and they make friends through the church, and the church does all the organization. But if you're not a religious person or do not agree with their dogma, then you say, well, then what? So Freemasonry offers that alternative because we don't have a dogma per se. We don't say you have to believe in this God or that God, but we do say you have to be a God-fearing person. That's one of our tenets, so to speak. Because if you don't believe in anything, then if you promise to do something, then that's not backed by any higher authority that you may have to respond to in the future, for lying or breaking an oath or something. So we feel people who believe there is a higher authority, these people, we can trust their word. And that's very important to us. Trust is very important in Freemasonry.
Well, trust goes along with morality to a certain
Yes,
extent, so
yes,
that would make
it does
total
exactly.
sense.
Yes, yeah, it's one of the cardinal virtues that we teach. So uh, how to join? Yes, the benefits. So this loneliness aspect is. Um, Joining in a Freemasonry, first of all, you're not stuck to one location. You join a lodge, you meet the people there. If you don't like those people for some reason or other, you can join another organization and there's no penalty. You don't have to start again. Once you're a master mason, you can move very easily. Lodges often have certain flavors, so to speak. So in Tokyo, until recently, we had a lodge that had a lot of restaurateurs, people owning restaurants, French restaurants, Italian restaurants, because they all knew each other. And they said, "Oh, come and join my lodge." So 50% of the members were restaurateurs, and that's fine. But they tended to go to eat at each other's restaurant, and they tend to got a little bit expensive. Mhm. But or sometimes lodges of policemen's lodges or university lodges where all the deans and professors are lodges. So they often have flavors like that.
So
Mm,
you said in your when we first were just booking this, you had said that it's the oldest fraternity, so it's
yes.
more of a fraternity than anything else.
Well, fraternity, yes. I mean, it's not in the
Traditional.
pi yes, the Phi Kappa Beta Greek letter
Yeah,
fraternity who just go drinking, and then they
yeah.
get beautiful rings that they share. Um, Ours is much more deep because we want to study the truth of the world, how the world works. It's Freemasonry's got different levels to it. So there's the level that everybody knows, the three rituals, but underneath that, there's another teaching that's hidden teaching, so to speak. And that's what I write about extensively in my books.
Have you had a lot of interest in your books?
They sell, they sell. I mean, they're not bestsellers,
Oh
but
no.
I have a lot of Zoom podcasts with other lodges and grand lodges, and I talk to them about a more so modern Freemasonry is very different from Freemasonry 300 years ago. The objectives have changed. We're now an international charity. Previously, in the 1700s, the charity, they didn't care if people suffering. That's not their problem. Their problem was survival.
Yeah.
They wanted to become something, and there weren't very many salaried jobs. It was piecemeal. You did something, you got paid. So you never knew what the future held for you. And so in those days, you were reliant on a trickle down economics from the king. The
Yeah.
king would give money to the aristocrats or to the nobility, and then they would hire somebody to build a house. Then they need an architect. Then they need people to build, or hire somebody to paint pictures, and they look for artists. So there are always all these one-off jobs, and that was their life. Nobody sat down, went to commute to work and get a salary on the 25th of every month. It just didn't happen like that. So they were living in different times.
What's interesting is when you talk about those times were very stressful, but in a way, even though we have the secured salary and we have the routine of things, it's somewhat even more stressful though, isn't it?
Um, it depends. I mean, it appeals to a lot of people who just get in a car and they go to work. If they do a good job or a bad job, doesn't make any difference to them, you know. They get paid either way, you know, unless you're really bad, you know, then you lose your job. But that's one of the problems we notice. I notice in Japan, the service tends to be really high quality service in restaurants, hotels. But other countries, people are kind of offhand about service, you know, do it yourself. Oh, it's over there, you know. I
Yeah.
like some, please. It's over there. No,
Yeah.
in Japan they bring it to you. You know, it's just kind of what I expect. You know, so um, so work. The yes, people. I think, but it's going to change, and I think this COVID crisis is part of that change. That companies realize that they can save a lot of money by having people not commuting
Yeah.
because they're paying for the commute. You know, in Japan, everybody gets a something like a $500 a month train ticket to commute. Well, if you have 10,000 employees, that's a lot of money, you know.
Yeah. Yes.
So, and as many people are now getting used to working through the internet and through Zoom and other um, uh, applications, this is going to change the way we work, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah. And hopefully it can find a way to lessen some people's stress. I
Yes,
mean,
exactly. Yeah.
depending on your position, I mean, even though you're getting paid, there's still this the stress of the actual job, which
Yeah.
I guess, goes back to neuroscience. How does stress affect the brain? What can
Uh,
stress do to the brain?
yes, it's everything. It's everything, and that's one of. So I have a a, uh, a I don't like to call it a cancer, but in medical terms, it's a cancer. I have a blood disease called polycythemia vera, and it could be quite dangerous unless I keep it in control. So anyway, I go to the doctor all the time and I'm in control. So I'm not really worried about it. And I talk to my doctor and he says, you know, we're organizing this, we're working on it. We've got drugs. And I say, I'm not taking any drugs. You know, I do not need drugs. And I show him a Venn diagram, 3 circles.
Hmm.
It's the body, the mind, and the spirit. And as a doctor, you could only give me consult me on the body, but the spirit and the mind are up to me. You know,
Yeah.
and this is what it's the spirit that alters the mind, and the mind produces a reaction in the physical body, and that's how we get sick. And so we all inside us have a biome. It's a kind of internal life of all these bacteria, parasites, viruses. They're always there. They've always been there. If you have a weak body, or if you believe you're going to get sick, this is what will happen. You will start to get sick. So if we believe that we are healthy, and if you work at it, you can overcome sickness quite easily. Probably 80% of sickness is uh, due to stress or a form of thinking, you know, negative thinking.
So you definitely believe in the power of healing, or the power of healing
Yes,
with the
exactly.
brain.
And so when somebody, if you meet a healer, often they're just switching on something that you believed anyway. You're just getting confirmation or a second opinion from somebody else who's healing you, but they're just helping you on the way to move you that step forward. Um, so like chi energy or the Reiki energy, you know, that you receive for somebody, you already have that inside you, but you just get that extra boost that starts the whole process going.
When I've gotten massaged, and
Mm,
not a lot of people have been able to say that they've seen this, but when somebody's working on me, especially around my head, I can see colors, and it's like my lava lamp.
mm,
It's the blue and the indigo moving around just like a lava lamp, and I can see it. My eyes are closed, and I can see
yeah,
the energy. And it's not
yeah.
everybody that works on me, it's the people that have more of a metaphysical background that when they're working on me, I can see the energy. And they're
Mm,
often like, nobody's ever said that to me. I'm like, it's weird. I don't do it in normal life, but then I
right.
can. And it's all
So
about healing.
I so I have several sources of income, and one of them is as a therapist for biomagnetism,
Hmm.
using small magnets to rebalance a person's energy field. That's how I phrase it, but other people phrase it differently. And basically, it changes the pH of organs inside your body. And so, because of stress and other things, your body internally can become either very acidic or over alkaline. So parts like your stomach have to be acidic because that's how food is broken down. But other parts of your body need to be alkaline. And if this gets unbalanced, it allows organisms to thrive in that area. So going back to probably junior high school when we did biology, these bacteria have certain environments that they like. Some are acidic, some are alkaline, some are various type of, and some of them feed on sugars, some feed on, anyway, don't want to get into the granular aspect, but this biome inside of us, you can change it using these magnets. And so I've specialized with Parkinson's disease, people who are getting immobile, they start stiffening up, they get in a lot of pain, and I've been able to ease their pain, and they get to a sort of quality of life that they never expected. I'm not saying it's a cure because it's not a cure, but it certainly eases the pain and the stiffness, and improves their balance, also the memory issues that they have. It's just using magnets, you know.
It's
And
impressive.
so I use, so to go to what you were talking about, colors, some of my patients say they can feel the energy flowing through them. And if I put a magnet on the top of their head and somewhere else, they feel a volt of electricity going through them. But these magnets are so small, you know, they're just little neodymium magnets. It's like half an inch. But so this is just opening up the channels in them, and people feel that their aura is starting to vibrate and to pulse and things. I hear all sorts of things. I don't see it, but the patient sees it and they love it.
Well, and if the patient sees it, then it's working. I mean, that's how you
That's
have to
right.
look at it.
Yes,
You
exactly.
have to look at it that it's working for them.
Yes. Right,
Um,
right. And so in Parkinson's, particularly, the main therapy is L-DOPA, and L-DOPA is great in the early days, but after you've been using it 5 years, the side effects become very, very powerful: shaking, tremoring, stiffness. It just destroys them. But you have no choice. It's either, suffer or,
yeah.
so um, so this is something I've been doing over the last couple of years. I'm really enjoying it. Mm,
Well, and if you're giving somebody relief, that's a huge gift. You
yeah,
know, it's not just a gift to them, but it's a gift to you because you know that you're helping somebody else.
I'm yes. That's one way of putting it. I just enjoy doing it. Yes, yes, yeah, yes.
So, do you ever think about moving back to London, or is this your home now?
Well, after I've been here 40 years, so I have more friends in Japan than I do in England, and my parents and family have mostly passed over to the happy hunting grounds. Um, yes, England's not the same England as when I was a child. Um, you see on television like Midsummer Murders or something like that. That's the England of my childhood. Those little villages, and
Uh-huh.
you know. Nowadays, it's not like that. It's. I think they must have a really challenging time to find good locations for the Midsummer Murders, because most of it's industrialized. It's got, highways, and it's just a different country. And people are different as well. They're not so friendly or open. They're more, they're different. Yeah. So I
So,
don't think I will. I'd go to a third country, but probably not back to England.
Did you watch The Crown?
No, I didn't. No, no.
I've watched The Crown, and it was an intriguing show.
Mm.
Um, but I was curious about England because that's one place I do wish to travel to, and I have
Mm.
a friend who's English, and you know I've heard good and bad, and I wanted your take because I know it's been you must have left right around the time Margaret Thatcher was in power, correct?
Yes, yes, yes.
And
70, 70, 74, 75.
that's when things changed a lot over there when she took power.
Um, I was studying economics at I had studied economics at high school, and I remember there was a lot of Japan bashing going on, that there were people complaining that Japanese import cars were subsidized by the Japanese government to undermine the English car industry. Well, to me, it just seemed that they made a better product, and cheaper,
Yeah.
better product and cheaper, and that's why people were buying it. And I thought, well, somebody's obviously not. I thought there was an opportunity for me there. If I studied Japanese, and with my background in economics, I could do something interesting. And so I applied to Cambridge. I got a provisional place, and then I came to Japan. I never went back to Cambridge.
My we had the same thing in America. I was a kid then, but my dad bought the first Toyota Celica in New Orleans at the time, and he got stopped a couple of times by police because they wanted to know what kind of car it was. He was a fireman, so
Yeah,
professional courtesy.
yeah.
But my grandfather, who had fought in the war, had some really nice choice words to say about that vehicle
Yeah.
because,
Mm,
but that was the whole thing. Yes, it was done to undermine the American car industry. Same
mm,
same
mm.
same line of different
Yes,
state, different country. So,
yes.
um, so I take it you definitely enjoy Japan then.
Well, it's there are a lot of good things about Japan. The healthcare system is excellent. It's very cheap. For example, the all the tests I did for the polycythemia, the whole thing cost me probably $50 or something like that. I went in for surgery a few years ago. I was in a single person room for 7 days, and the bill was $300.
Wow.
You know, and so there are negative aspects to the country. There's a bit of xenophobia. We don't have many foreigners here. They tend to be skilled people. Um, we we have very few um, people of color. Very few. They just don't get visas. So it's a homogeneous society. I just don't see foreigners very much. I don't actually live in the center of Tokyo. I live in the suburbs, but like my gym, it's I don't know how many people in there, 1,500 perhaps, but I've only seen one foreigner apart from
Wow.
myself. You know, so
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So those are, it's different, but it's very clean here. We don't have weapons. There are no guns. There's no violence. Women can walk the street. My wife walks the streets late at night after work, and nothing happens. I mean, she's not afraid of it. It just doesn't. Nothing happens.
So then there's not as much fear over there. You're not living in a fear-based society per se.
People are frightened of other things.
Right,
They're
but
frightened of their position in society. They're frightened of being, let's see, I'm not sure. They've it's a different type of fear. I've noticed. It's
it's not like in America where now, if you go to the grocery store, somebody might have a gun and might
yeah,
get upset.
yes, yeah,
Um,
no,
so I mean,
we don't have that. No,
yeah,
nothing like it. No,
we didn't have
uh,
it a few years until about 10 years ago. Then,
yeah,
you know,
yes,
I think a lot of it has to do with fear and stress in this country, in America. And there's a lot of people that are wound very tight.
yes,
And that's it. Even though you don't want to be fearful, there is always that underlying fear now.
yes.
Because somebody can get mad if you cut them off on the road.
Yes, yes. And that's one of the negative things about the media, because they're just fanning this.
Hmm.
They're not making it, trying to play it down. They're just trying to play it up, because that's where the ratings come from. High ratings sells advertising space.
Well, that
That's what.
we switched it over to infotainment. It's no longer
Yes.
news; it's infotainment.
Yeah.
When you started the 24-hour news cycle, then what is hot today, maybe nothing tomorrow. But if we can make this and push this, and it's the same thing. I was talking to somebody about social media the other day, and she was her daughter's friend in college. One day she got, I think, like 200,000 hits on TikTok because
Mm,
she put on a bikini, and the
mm,
next day she only got 4,000 hits, and she
mm.
was devastated. And it's like, it's not real. It's all an algorithm that's deciding if you're going to be seen today or not.
Yeah.
And we put so much pressure on that aspect of it, and that creates another whole level of stress for the younger generation.
And one of the things, and actually I can tie this back to Freemasonry, is that these 400,000 hits, they're not friends.
No.
They're strangers. There's just people who look at her as a piece of meat, as a target or something like that. Oh, she's a nice target. If only I was younger. That sort of attitude. Where in Freemasonry, we make real friendships. And that's the difference. That's why I really enjoy it, because when we meet up and we talk about, we do either do ritual, or we talk about, I don't know, philosophy or something, then we have a meal afterwards and just chat among ourselves, and we make great friendships. And these are friends I've known for 30 years. And I think this has been one of the, besides Freemasonry being a kind of force for social cohesion because of all the charitable work we do, but individually we make really good friendships. And this avoids that problem with loneliness I was mentioning, because if somebody doesn't come to lodge for a while, we call him, or we send. If you're lucky, you get the Speaker of the House of Commons come and visit you. Are you okay? But that's what it's about. We're checking you're okay, and we're worried about your how you're feeling. And also, we've had, we call them brethren, because they're like brothers to us, and people who've fallen hard times, we've paid their rent for them. So particularly, in Japan, we paid for one person's rent 2 years.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, COVID has been a different experience because I started out COVID with my husband, and in June of last year, he passed. And the rituals that you would do for somebody passing, what he wanted was a party. Haven't
Mm.
been able to do it.
Uh,
And we're coming up on a year, but within that year, I had to learn how to go from being a couple to being by myself. And I have
yes,
friends that I talk to all the time, but with COVID, you are more isolated because you can't necessarily go out and reconnect with somebody. I mean, some of my friends were like, I don't care, come on over.
yes.
So I did. And now, and this I'm going to state publicly, and I'm most likely to get blasted for this, I can't take the vaccine. My
Mm.
doctor has said because of my allergies and my autoimmune problems, she doesn't want me taking the vaccine for at least 6 months to a year, which
I have the
means,
same. I have the
okay,
same situation. Yes. So I'm not a denier. I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 20 some years, and I was on the marketing team that introduced a vaccine from Merck Sharp and Dome into Japan.
mhm,
It was a vaccine for pneumonia, and I have an underlying asthma issue,
mhm,
and so I used to get pneumonia all the time. I used to get once a year, at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. So when the pneumonia vaccine came available, I signed up for it, and it's a 23 valent. So we talk a lot about valence now. With COVID, you got the Indian valent, you got the English valent, but the pneumonia vaccine had 23 different
wow.
instructions. And so I thought, there's nothing going to get me. So I had the inoculation. 6 months later, I got pneumonia. I thought, shit. So I went and saw my doctor, and he said, "Oh, you're unlucky. You got the 24th valent." How's
uh,
that help me? So, you know, when you work for the industry, it's very difficult, because you believe in what you're doing,
yeah.
because in the big picture, pharmaceuticals is a good thing, but there's a lot of strange, not really good things going on in pharmaceuticals. You know, if all the companies joined forces, the whole world would be healthy. But because they're competing against each other,
Right.
uh, they and particularly with doctors, and don't use his vaccine, use mine. You know,
Yeah.
that's not good for the whole world. You know, for individual company, yes, but not for the whole world.
Well, the thyroid medication that I was on has been available for over 100 years. But
Mm.
another pharmaceutical company said, oh, wait, it's a biologic. So it has to be approved as a biologic. So guess what? We're going to pull it completely off the market. I
Uh,
can't take anything else. I have to go now to a specialized pharmacy to have it made. But, back to the vaccines, I am not an anti vaxxer. I believe in vaccines. It's just my doctor's like, so for the next 6 months to a year, you're going to have to keep wearing your mask and
yeah,
gloves if necessary. And I'm like, okay.
yeah,
So, and I don't think we all look at those pictures. It's like everybody wants the vaccine, but unfortunately, for some of us, like yourself, you can't necessarily take it, and that's an unfortunate thing because then we're still stuck living in this limbo land.
yes, yes. Unfortunately, Japan really didn't introduce any severe measures, and now we're paying for it. We're in the fourth wave now, and
Wow,
it's the numbers are really quite high, and it may even bring down the Olympics. Uh,
really?
we're talking, you know, everybody's the Japanese 60% of the Japanese population do not want the Olympics. They think it's too dangerous. You know?
I can see that. I mean, over here in America, everybody's like, I can't wait to go do this. I can't wait to go. And I'm just sitting here going, mm-mm. I'm
Mm.
just going to sit here and wait and mind
Yeah,
my P's and Q's.
yeah.
Let's go out to eat. Nope, not going to do it because if I got to take off my mask, what's the point? So I I understand where you're at. I understand where I'm at, and it's
Yeah.
hard because telling your friends it's a big deal because immediately, especially over here, they're like, "Oh, you must be an anti-vaxxer." No, it's not. It's the fact that I
Mm.
can't,
No, no.
per
And
my doctor.
no, so yes, it's a individual choice. That's the way
Yeah,
it should be. Um,
yeah. So I didn't mean to get off on topic on that. So if you had something to say about the Freemasons for the younger generation, how would you recommend it?
um, yes, we're seeing a lot of growth in younger generation, particularly in the UK. We've noticed a lot of people, younger people, wanting to join what we call the craft. It's a craft. It's like we're building something, and I would suggest that they read about it before they make any decisions. You know, because um, it's not for everybody. It's you have to study some things that you may think a little bit strange, because our ritual's based on something that happened 300 years ago, and we haven't changed it. You know, we're still using the same words. The words are very strange. The story is very strange. It's to do with building King Solomon's temple. Therefore, we have to be some sort of subversive Jewish organization. No, it's just King Solomon's temple, you know. But people misunderstand what they don't. Um, yes, what's it? Cornelius Agrippa, the theologian and occultist, in one of his books, he said that dogs bark at what they don't understand. And it's so true. You
It's
know,
it's very true. I mean, I have friends that are Wiccan, and they have three rules they follow. Very simple, but they do rituals, and it's not. I think rituals, if you really look at it, the church does a ritual. It's
yes.
just it's the way it's named and presented that, like you said, if somebody doesn't understand something, then they're going to knock it.
Particularly the church has authority. You see, that's the problem. It's recognized by the government, particularly England, the Church of England. The Queen is the head of the Church of England. You say anything about the Church of England, you're maligning the Queen, you know. And in fact, that could get you into prison even nowadays, you know. So,
Wow.
because she still has that authority. So, um, but the whole thing about bishops, they they put themselves on a pedestal, but really they're no more spiritual than anybody. Actually, probably less spiritual than a lot of people I know. they're not connected to the other side, you know,
Mhm.
like yourself, you know, you're hearing voices. Why can't bishops do that? Isn't that their job? You know?
Well, then they come to the whole point of, well, if you're hearing voices, are you crazy? It's not that I'm
Yeah,
hearing voices. I get I get the words. I don't necessarily
yeah,
always hear them, but you
yeah,
know, it's a matter of, are you plugged in and what is deemed crazy? There's so many things that if we can't explain it, we put it in a box and say it's
yes.
crazy and put it away because we can't face it and we can't deal with it.
Mm, yes. It's like I talk to sometimes Christians because I like to hear their point of view and hear something different. Of course, they're just teaching, they're telling me the dogma that they learnt. But when I talk to them about possession and devils and evil spirits, oh, they say, oh no, no, that's not Christianity. Well, sorry, that's the other side of Christianity. That's
Yeah.
what you're meant to be fighting, you know.
Yeah.
You're meant to be bringing the light and the angels to fight all this negativity. You can't just say it doesn't exist, you know.
No. But I mean,
But that's what I
that
hear all the time.
because it's easier to deny it
Yeah,
than to embrace.
yeah.
The strange One of the strangest things I had happen to me is when my stepmother died. I was up here and she was in Tunica, Mississippi, and I had gone to bed. I woke up saying I couldn't breathe. Okay, and I couldn't go back to sleep. When I finally went back to sleep, my dad calls at 6:30 in the morning, tells me my stepmother died. A year later, I finally asked him. I said, "What exactly happened?" He says, "Well, we went to bed, and I woke up because Cindy said, 'Donnie, I can't breathe.'" I'm like, okay. Now, how do you explain that? How can I
Yeah,
mean, I understand we can explain it because of the connection,
mm,
but ultimately somebody would look at me and go, "You're just insane."
yeah, yeah,
But it's being
yeah,
connected.
yes. And it's, I think it's honoring that connection and working with it. And um, you have to trust it as well. When I get information from the other side, I don't second guess it. You know, I say, that's it, you know, okay. That's it. Thank you. There's nothing else
Mhm.
to it, you know. So, are you sure? Can I check? No, they're giving me information for my benefit. Why would I have to check anything? You know,
Yeah.
so particularly with dowsing, you know, and so you mentioned that dowsing's awesome, absolutely awesome. Yeah,
Do
so
you ever
simple.
do you ever worry? Because I mean, with me with a pendulum, it's like I don't always trust the pendulum because I feel like sometimes maybe my hand's shaking or maybe there's a wind blowing. You know, the air conditioner comes on. How do you feel comfortable enough to know that that is true and not questionable?
The movement of the pendulum is so strong. In my case, if you, I mentioned I forgot his name, Grace, Raymond Grace. He has a video when he picks up the pendulum. It's like it's about to take off.
Okay.
It's just spinning around so fast. I get that a lot,
Okay.
and so depending on the power coming through the pendulum, whether it's a small movement, a large movement, or just about to spin out the room, then that's also part of the answer. You know, it's a very strong reaction or a lukewarm reaction. That is part of the answer I'm getting from the other side. But yeah, I've used it for so long. I just have to pick up anything that looks like a pendulum. It'll start swinging. Keychain, anything. I don't need some special um, uh, crystal
Chris,
from Prague that was blessed by some angel or something. I don't need that. I just need something, a heavy weight on a string, and it works. Yeah.
understand. Got that
Yeah.
completely. I know that we were supposed to completely focus on Freemasonry, and I'm happy that you went on the journey with me through neuroscience and metaphysics and all that
Yeah.
stuff because I find it fascinating, and you've been a fascinating guest. Um, so your website is chris-earnshaw.com, and I will put that in the um, on the post as well. Is there
Thank you.
anything you would like to add before I ask the question?
Anything I would like to add? Well, to go back to the beginning, you know, I think Freemasonry is a really important. Um, uh, it's a really unique institution um, that would be difficult to recreate. People have tried to do it, but the original is just so fascinating for me. And I've met I think in my address book, 80% of the people in my address book are all Freemasons, and they're just people who have similar, like I'm talking with you. We all talk about the same things. We talk about Bible, the religion, the truth in the Bible. There's a as a verse in Matthew we call the zombie verse. Who knows about it? It's where the dead come out of the grave and they start to celebrate in the street. What's all that about? But that's in Matthew. It's one of the gospels. You ask a bishop, they say, "Oh, it's a mistake." So they're all trying to fluff around it, but he actually says the dead got out of the graves and started to parade in the streets. So all these sort of things. This is what we talk about. And just uh, so we are combating charities and social issues, children's hospitals, and reading issues and inequality, and we have no barriers. We have a female Freemason and we have a male Freemason organization. Sometimes we meet, but normally we don't. But we don't have any barrier according to people's race or religion, which makes us really unique. It's very difficult for a person like me to walk into a synagogue, and just sit there and listen. I mean,
Yeah.
just too difficult. But we have Zoroastrians, we have people of all sorts of faiths in Freemasonry, and all ages and all classes. If that word still exists, I don't know. And races. Well, we just have a great milieu, and it's been a wonderful journey for me, and yeah, I've enjoyed it a lot, yes.
Now that you brought the Bible verse, I have one more question for you. So
Oh, sorry.
Tarot of the Revelation.
Yes.
What can you tell me about that?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I studied at Edgar Casey's.
Mm-hmm.
He set up a university called Atlantic University, and I did my master's there. And I came across a book by Edgar Casey called Commentary on the Book of Revelation, and I read it, and I immediately recognized the cards from the tarot. The illustrations were in there. 14 cards. The first 14 cards of the tarot can be identified in the Book of Revelation, and not only that, they're in the same order.
Really?
Yes, I was really surprised, and I said, "Why didn't everybody know this?" And so then I did some research, and I said, "I've got to publish it." So I published it, and then people asked for the cards, and
Well, what's interesting is that the first cards, I mean, basically the major arcana in the tarot is known as the Fool's Journey.
yes.
So the Fool's Journey is in Revelations. It's kind of an interesting.
Well, it starts off with a person by himself, and he's meditating on Patmos Island, which is near Greece. Actually, yes, it's nearer Turkey. Yeah, and he's been abandoned. John felt he was abandoned. He's the fool.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next card is the magician. Well, the magician in the book of Revelation is an angel appears and says, I see you. And the word they use, that John was in the spirit. Well, basically,
Okay.
he was either meditating or he was having an out-of-body experience, whichever. And then he saw this angel, and his angel said, "Let me show you the future." And that's the whole tarot story.
Neat. Okay.
It, it's it's that's what part of my growth, I think. Growth to from there I went into dowsing and then out of body experiences and all the spiritual stuff.
Well, I think I always find it fascinating is because when I read cards, we actually had somebody, we worked at a festival in a smaller town, and they actually protested, and they blessed the gym before we went, and then they blessed the gym after we left, and they were trying, God versus demons. Here, have a bottle of water if you don't go in. But I always find it interesting that they're like, well, that's the devil, and I'm like, but the Pope read cards at one point, and now you're telling me this is in Revelation, which I did not know. So
this book, I don't know if you can see it,
I can say it,
Meditations
yeah.
on the Tarot, was
Uh-huh.
written by a Roman Catholic cardinal.
Ah,
Yeah, and it's a great book about the occult. And there's a picture of this book on one of the Pope's desk. He's reading it. Perhaps John the Second. I'm not sure, but there's a picture of this book on his desk. So
Nice.
yeah.
Nice. So now that I've digressed a little bit, I apologize. I guess
No.
I will pose the question. So was it better to have joined the Freemason than not? I think I know the answer, but
In my case, yes. I don't think it's for everybody, but definitely a resounding yes.
well, I thank you for going on this journey with me, Chris. I appreciate you very much, and I'm sure my listeners and my viewers will enjoy this little podcast. So thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Yes,
Have a
thank
good
you, Donna. Yes,
have a good day.
and stay safe.
You too.